Today we're talking about one of my two favorite topics, conspiracy theories. The other one's cults, but I haven't figured a way to work that into the class yet, but give me time. So, back in the 1990s, R.I.P., the guy from Smash Mouth who recently passed, conspiracy theories were extremely fringe. They provided the backdrop for television shows like The X-Files, which, spoiler alert, was premised on a secret government conspiracy to help aliens colonize Earth, or something. The writing took a big dive in the later seasons. But that's not to say conspiracy theories were simply benign entertainment. They were already affecting American politics. We can look at events like the Ruby Ridge standoff and the Oklahoma City bombing and see the influence of anti-government conspiracy theories, specifically the white genocide conspiracy theory. In each case, there was a belief that the government was looking to seize people's guns. In the case of Oklahoma City, this spawned more conspiracy theories that the government knew about the attack but did nothing to stop it, to use it as an excuse to clamp down on anti-state militias. And this just wasn't in the 1990s. There is a long history of conspiracy thought in American politics, going all the way back to the founding of the Republic. However, with the growth of information technology, especially the combination of the internet, smartphones, and social media, there has been something of an explosion of conspiracy theories. The attack on the US Capitol building on January 6 was in no small part driven by the intersection of Donald Trump supporters with two conspiracy theories, the QAnon conspiracy theory, and that the election was stolen by Joe Biden. This raises questions about whether democracy is under threat by conspiracy theory, and to take the concern one step further, do conspiracy theories help to illustrate why democracy isn't the best form of government? In this particular video, we're going to lay the groundwork for the concept of a conspiracy theory and define our terms. So, let's get started. What is a conspiracy theory? In order to answer that question, let's have a look at some examples from history and the present day. A cabal of witches was undermining the godly government of the Massachusetts colony, thus leading to the Salem witch trials. Coca-Cola introduced Coke 2, an inferior product, in order to mask the switch from cane sugar to high fructose corn syrup when they brought back Coca-Cola Classic in response to public demand. Harold Holt did not drown. He was a secret agent of the Chinese government and boarded a submarine to defect to Beijing. Paul McCartney died in a car accident in 1966 and was replaced by a lookalike, a Scottish orphan named William Shears Campbell, and the Beatles left secret clues in their lyrics. Elvis faked his own death, but made a cameo appearance in the film Home Alone. JFK was assassinated by the CIA. JFK was assassinated by the Cubans. JFK was assassinated by the Soviets. JFK was assassinated by the Mafia. JFK was assassinated by Lyndon Baines Johnson. JFK was assassinated by the shadow government. JFK was assassinated by the military-industrial complex. JFK was assassinated by the Israelis. JFK was assassinated by the Secret Service. By accident. JFK shot himself. No one assassinated JFK. His head just did that. Adolf Hitler faked his death and escaped to Argentina. Adolf Hitler faked his death and escaped to Antarctica. Adolf Hitler faked his death and escaped to the moon. The moon is a hologram. The moon is hollow. The Earth is hollow. The world is controlled by a species of humanoid reptilians who live inside the hollow Earth and feed off our fear and hatred in the form of orgone energy. The world is controlled by the Illuminati. The world is controlled by the Jews. The world is controlled by the Freemasons. The world is controlled by the World Economic Forum. The world is controlled by a cabal of pedophiles, and their headquarters is the basement of a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C. Barack Obama was not born in the United States, he was born in Kenya and can't be president as a result. Universities are controlled by a cabal of Marxist academics who are implementing a plan to destroy Western culture through critical theory. We don't have the guts to do a conspiracy theory or the time. In the 1950s, the CIA spread LSD amongst the population of America in order to see if they could use mind control. HIV was made in a lab. SARS was made in a lab. COVID-19 was made in a lab. The Black Death was made by the Jews, possibly in a lab. Vaccines cause autism. Fluoride in the water is a communist plot to pollute our precious bodily fluids. Climate change is a hoax to get more funding for big science. The 15-minute city is a plot to make people into serfs who can't leave their home. The fire in Hawaii was caused by a space laser, possibly Jewish. The fossil fuel industry is suppressing the immense power of real energy which was given to us by the inhabitants of the hollow earth who aren't reptiles but angels. The internet is fake. Birds aren't real. Mothman did 9/11. Okay, so what can we say about this, other than there is a huge intersection between conspiracy theory and anti-Semitism? Well, there's a lot of common features. Per Usinski and Parent, a conspiracy is 1. A group, 2. Acting in secret. 3. To alter institutions, usurp power, hide truth, or gain utility. 4. At the expense of the common good. This becomes a conspiracy theory when the causal explanation for events, such as the Kennedy assassination, are attributed to the clandestine planning of a hidden group acting together to fulfill a secret plan that is thought to be unlawful or malevolent. Now, here's something very important to note. There is nothing in this definition that means conspiracy theories are false. Indeed, at least one of the conspiracies I mentioned is true. No, it's not that JFK's head spontaneously exploded. It is Operation Midnight Climax. That's right. In the 1950s and 60s, the CIA used prostitutes to lure men into safe houses where they were dosed with a wide array of drugs, including LSD, then subjected to interrogation and subliminal mind control techniques. It's how the CIA accidentally started the counterculture in the 1960s. And we know this because in the 1970s, there was exposés in the New York Times and other prominent newspapers. This led to the Rockefeller Commission in the 1970s, which exposed CIA activities, including the use of drugs on American citizens. It also led to a prohibition on the use of drugs in human experiments without explicit consent. The other thing we may want to flag is that conspiracy theories often contradict epistemological authorities on the subject they're addressing, such as historians, scientists, politicians, who are all seen to be either part of the conspiracy or dupes for the conspirators. Now, this is all in isolation pretty, individualized. But what becomes interesting is when these beliefs spread, right? Conspiracy beliefs are those specific conspiracies that people think are true. Now, when they get into society, we get a wider phenomenon, and that is the spread of the conspiracy mentality. Conspiracy mentality is a predisposition to attribute causal explanations for events to the hidden designs of powerful elites, the state or large corporations, or ideological or ethnic outgroups such as communists or Jews. This becomes the go-to for some people. So whenever something bad or strange happens in society, instead of looking for a simple explanation, an Occam's razor, they look for the conspiracy whenever something occurs. This is why there might be a connection between people who start thinking, maybe the moon landing's fake, to people who start thinking more broadly about, say, QAnon or New World Order style conspiracies. Once you start down the path, the mentality gets in your cabeza. We should also bear in mind that this isn't a phenomena that affects the right and the left exclusively. Usinski and Parent's survey of American conspiracy theories found that when Democrats are in power, right-wing conspiracy talk escalates, focusing on things like communist subversion of the government, unions, and the wokerati undermining the American family. When Republicans are in power, conspiracy talk goes the other way. Starts talking about big corporations, Wall Street, and hidden right-wing organizations moving wealth towards the capitalist class. Now, regardless of who's in power, foreigners are always a popular target. There's always someone outside the United States trying to undermine American government. We can say the same thing to the media. Both the left and the right view the mainstream media as being complicit with broader conspiracies. However, there's a bit of an asterisk here. Recent studies by Walter and Drohan have shown that actually right-wing beliefs are now one of the most important predictors of conspiracy mentality. Now, what's interesting about Walter and Drohan's experiment is that it covers many different countries. It's not just stuck on America. And that brings up the question, is conspiracy theory actually a particularly American phenomenon? Certainly since Robert Hofstadter wrote The Paranoid Style in American Politics, Hofstadter used the term paranoid because he said, no other word evokes the sense of heated exaggeration, suspiciousness, and conspiratorial fantasy that I have in mind. In 1964, he thought that this was a major trend in American political behavior, from anti-Masonic, anti-Catholic, anti-international banker, and anti-communist conspiracies that ranged through American history. However, while there is a slightly higher tendency of Americans to believe in conspiracy theories, the comparative studies that I mentioned before have shown that many Western European democracies either have a same level of belief as America, such as France and Portugal, or are very close. Conspiracy thought seems to be gathering a degree of force across all of the developed democracies. Now, what may be different in the American case is the willingness of public officials and prominent citizens to engage in discussion of conspiracy theories. If you look at politicians like Joe McCarthy, who drove the Red Scare in the 1950s, you get a great example. He thought that communists had infiltrated the American government and were undermining democracy and capitalism. But conspiracy thought is evident even in respectable politicians in American history, like Honest Abe Lincoln. Lincoln very clearly advocated the slave power conspiracy. He didn't advocate for abolition. People forget this. He argued that the interests of the most powerful slaveholders via their states in the Union were subverting the national interest for their own. Michael Butter has clearly pointed this out in the House Divided speech. Lincoln named Senator Stephen Douglas, Chief Justice Taney, Presidents Franklin Pierce, and James Buchanan as part of the slave power conspiracy. I quote, I feel like I should wear the stovepipe hat and a fake beard. But when we see a lot of framed timbers, different portions of which we know have gotten out at different times and places and by different workmen, Stephen, Franklin, Roger, and James, for instance, and when we see these timbers joined together and see they exactly make a frame of a house or a mill, in such a case we find it impossible not to believe that Stephen and Franklin and Roger and James all understood one another from the beginning and all worked upon a common plan. And we could hardly mention presidents spouting conspiracy without mentioning Donald Trump, who made his political name peddling the birther conspiracy, spent his presidency accusing the state of working against him, and his post-presidency lobbing accusations about the election being stolen by Joe Biden. What is interesting about the Trumpian turn in conspiracy theory is that, in the words of Nancy Rosenblum and Russell Muirhead, it does away with the theory part. Traditional conspiracy theories often have elaborate explanations constructed around proof that doesn't meet the tests of mainstream epistemological authorities. Think of that meme picture of Charlie Kelly with all of the sort of conspiracy board up there pointing at where the mail comes from. I, for example, can remember when I was in high school. Our American history teacher in my final year had a special presentation of one of his friends talking about the Kennedy assassination. It was 90 minutes long. It had a perfect copy of the Zapruder film. It had photographic analysis of the Oswald pictures where he's holding the communist magazines and a rifle to show that they were actually false photos made by the CIA. It was elaborate. It was in depth. There was a lot of evidence. The new conspiracism does away with all that. Think about Trump's favorite phrase, a lot of people are saying. That has become standard. The mere assertion of a conspiracy with the promise of a theory yet to come is its hallmark, yet no theory ever emerges. In mid-2023, Trump said that he was going to do a press conference with, all caps, irrefutable evidence that the election was stolen. But then it was canceled a few days before. He's never followed up on his promise to reveal widespread electoral fraud. Now, this is a disturbing shift away from traditional conspiracy theories, which tended at least to have their own epistemological standards of proofs, to one which is essentially epistemologically nihilistic. Knowledge doesn't matter. Proof doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is belief. The final thing I want to talk about in this section is the condition under which people come to adopt the conspiracy mentality. Now, there is a lot of debate about why people start believing in conspiracy theories and why they start to default to conspiracy theories. But there are several things that we can note across the board. One is cynicism about politics. The idea that politics has been captured by an elite, people who do not have the interests of the people at heart, and that it is simply no longer reflective of the interests of the wider population. The second thing is instability. Conspiracy theories flourish when people don't have regular incomes, when they're worried about things like climate change, when they're worried about things like pandemic diseases. There was a big uptick during COVID-19 in belief in QAnon, for example. This attaches also to a general feeling of disenfranchisement. When you feel like society is against you, you start thinking, well, society can't be against me. If you're an American, then you've been brought up to believe in the stars and stripes and the American dream. So if that's not working, it has to be the plot of someone else. And the final predictor is that a lot of it's men. Guys, we're a little vulnerable to conspiracy theories. I don't know why men believe in conspiracy theories more than women, but they do apparently. What can you do? Okay, that brings us to the end of this first section. What did we learn? Dr. Blunt knows way too much about specific conspiracy theories. But we're going to pick it up in the next part when we talk about conspiracy theories and democracy.